All right, so today we are going to be making diced tomatoes. I also make this with onions as well. And we're also going to be making mild Rotel. I have 50 pounds of tomatoes that I need to get canned. Just #2 tomatoes. They can be blemished. They don't have to be perfect. And then I've got all of my ingredients. So I've got my Vidalia sweet onions. I have my jalapenos for the Rotel and some other peppers as well. So let's get started. All right, this is not something that you need to cook, but because I have so many tomatoes to do, it's really easy if I just use the insert in my roaster to cut all the tomatoes and ingredients into. So if you have a roaster, super handy. So canned tomatoes do not have to be pressure cooked. They can be water bathed. So you will need some type of large pot. I have this, it's actually for canning. It's got a nice little insert in it that makes pulling the jars out super easy and putting them in. So you'll want to make sure that you have some type of large pot for water bathing, which we'll get into the details of that later. I'm going to be using quart-sized jars. So while I'm cutting things and getting it all in the pan, I will be running these through my dishwasher to sterilize them. You'll need to sterilize the jars, the lids, and the rings. So I've got my lids here and my rings, and those will all go in the dishwasher. I just do it on the rinse cycle with the sanitize button on. So if you don't have a dishwasher to do that with, you can use your pot that you're going to can with. Get the water boiling, and then just put your jars and rings and lids in there and let them boil for about 5 to 10 minutes, and then you can pull them out and put more of your jars in until you have as many as you will need sanitized. So let's get into the process of what we're gonna put in as far as ingredients go. So we're gonna make the diced tomatoes first, and like I said, I also put onions in there because we love onions and everything that we make has onions in it. So we will do that first, and then when I've got that canned, I'll already have all my tomatoes and onions diced, and I can just add my peppers for the Rotel. All right, so you're gonna want a really sharp knife, which I've just sharpened this one. I've got all of my tomatoes, 50 pounds, in the sink, and they're all rinsed. And I've got my pot here that I'm gonna go ahead and cut all the tomatoes into. I cut them by hand. You can use a food processor if you want. You can use, there's a lot of other different equipment. I just cut them all by hand. So I'm gonna go ahead and get these all cut and in the pan, and then we'll talk about the next step. So I do wanna show you how I'm cutting these. I am taking just the very top of this core out. You don't want that in your tomatoes. I have this really nice cutting board that just fits in my sink, which helps keep the mess off the counter. So I'm just gonna cut it in half, lay it down that half side flat. I'm gonna make a couple of slices and then turn it and make a couple of slices this way. And it makes it super easy to get each tomato diced up and then thrown in the pot. So super easy. I love this little cutting board in the sink. Keeps all that mess off the counter. All right, so I've got about 30 pounds of tomatoes of the 50 pounds in here, and it was getting pretty full. So I went ahead and I've sliced up one whole bag of Vidalia onions, but I wanted to show you my little shortcut for slicing these, very similar as the way I did the tomatoes. Just slice it one way, flip it, slice it the other way, and usually that last bit I'll flip over. If it starts to get, like the onion starts to get strong and your eyes start to water, just rinse everything in water and that'll help. You can also dip your knife in olive oil and that'll help with some of that. But now that I've got the tomatoes and the onions in here, I'm gonna give this a good stir, and then I'm gonna get my sterilized jars and we will start filling them. All All right, so as you can see, I've got my tomatoes and onions all diced up in here. It's about, like I said, it's about 30 pounds and then probably another pound for the onions. How much onions you put in here is completely up to you. You don't even have to do onions. It's just to taste. And then I've got all of my sterilized jars here. And then I also have this little gadget funnel to help with filling them. So all of my jars are regular mouth. You can do wide mouth, but I don't know why you would unless you're canning really bulky stuff. But the regular mouth seems to work really well for me. So now it's just as simple as putting your funnel in. I go over the pan in case I drop anything because I'm super messy. And you're gonna fill this to about a quarter from the top. They call that headspace. You wanna leave about a 1/4 inch of headspace in there. And we'll push that down a little bit. So that should be about right as far as headspace goes. And then we're just gonna continue filling, this looks so good. We're just gonna continue filling these jars until we have them all full. And then we will go on to the next step. All right, a couple of things while I'm canning these. If you overfill a jar, you can definitely pack it down. Depending on how full you want your jars to be, or if you don't want to take whatever was extra out. You also heard me mention number 2 tomatoes earlier at the beginning of this video. So for those of you who are very already good at canning, or you know your tomatoes, you know what a number 2 tomato is. But you can all laugh with me because when I first started, I had no idea what a number 2 tomato was. I thought it was like a type of tomato, you know, like there's big boys, there's Romas, there's all kinds of different types of tomatoes. I just thought number 2 was a type of tomato. So I was looking everywhere for number 2 tomatoes and I couldn't find them. And then finally one day, my wonderful now husband told me that a number 2 tomato is simply just a tomato that was passed over to sell in the store as a slicing tomato because it's blemished or something. And so they're called a number 2 tomato. So that's what you want to use for canning. You don't want to use the really nice slicing tomatoes. You want to find the number 2s. Typically, you know, you can find those at farmers markets. You can actually the 50 pounds that I got today, I found on Marketplace. You can grow your own. You can find like a farmer's auction where they'll actually sell them by the bushel or the box. So that's another way you can find number 2s. And then once you have them, you start your little canning process. All right, so now that we have our jars full, we need to put just a little bit of lemon juice in each jar so that way we can maintain the acidity that is needed to prevent the tomatoes from spoiling. You can measure it. I am like my grandmother. I measure nothing, but for this, I guess I'll measure it. So for a quart jar, which is what these are, you need a tablespoon. If it's a pint, you only need a teaspoon, which a pint's half of this. So we'll go ahead and get a tablespoon of lemon juice in each one of these, and then we'll go on to the next step. One other thing I will say, you can add salt to your jars as well. However, I make mine no sodium because when we cook, we'll add the sodium at that point in time if there's any kind of spice or seasoning that I'm adding with salt. So I do not add salt when I'm canning. We just do no sodium, but that is an option. If you wanted to add salt, it would be similar to the lemon juice, a tablespoon for a quart, a teaspoon for a pint, or as always, to taste. So if you like really salty stuff, you can do more. If you don't, you can do less, or like me, you can do none. So let me finish the lemon juice and then we'll go on to the next step. All right, so I have my jars all full. I ended up getting 13 quart jars. And what I really want to make sure you guys understand is it doesn't have to be perfect, okay? So some of my jars have a little more headspace than others. So don't sweat it if you don't have that perfect 1/4 inch headspace. It's perfectly fine. Also remember that you can you can compact this to get the air out and be able to put more in there as well. I did that especially towards the end because I kind of had an odd amount. It wasn't enough to fill a whole quart jar, but I didn't want to waste it either. So again, you'll see that some of mine have that perfect little 1/4 inch headspace in it, and some of them don't, and that's perfectly okay. So the next step in making our diced tomatoes is wiping all the edges of the jar to make sure that there's nothing on there that might prevent it from sealing. And I've just got a warm washcloth. It doesn't even have to have soap on it. And you're just gonna make sure that you wipe around the entire edge, including where the rim's gonna go. So get that done. One other thing that I'll mention as well while I'm doing this is you don't have to take the skins off the tomatoes. I did just think of that. I don't. I very rarely remove skins from anything because typically that's where the most nutrients are, whether it's a vegetable or let's say fish or anything else. You really don't ever want to remove the skin if you're okay with that, because again, that's where the majority of the nutrients are actually found. So if you are not worried about it, it's so much easier if you don't remove the skins. Even when I do stewed whole tomatoes, I don't remove the skin. Not that I do stewed whole tomatoes very often because I don't use those. I use a lot of diced tomatoes and a lot of Rotel. So now that I have all of those wiped down, we're gonna get our little lids. I have a couple different brands that I use. Obviously there's Ball. I did just buy these at Monita Farm and Supply. It's a Pure brand, so I'll be trying these out today as well. So we will just go ahead and get all of our lids on. And while I'm doing this, you are gonna want to have your stove on so that can start warming up. So I will finish this and I will give you the next step. All right, so I have my water warming up almost to a boil. A couple things I want to mention about your pots. So first of all, this is my pressure cooker. It's just a large pot, so I can also water bath with it as well, which is super nice. You also want to make sure that you don't ever have anything touching the bottom of the pot. So there are liners in both of these. Like I said, this one's got this cool little liner that you can pull out. This one has something similar as well. It just doesn't have the handles on it. So there are lines on here. You want to fill it to this line, and the max fill would be this line. I'm doing quart jars, and I don't need to do a second layer, so I've just got it filled to that line. Same thing on this. There's a reason there's these ridges. You fill to this first ridge, and the max fill once you've loaded your jars is the second one. So now that I've got that situated, I'm just gonna wait for that to boil, and then we'll do the next step and put in our jars. All right, so my water is now simmering, and I'm gonna go ahead and get my jars in the pots. So I already got the ring on. Make sure that your ring is hand tight. If it's loose, it could come off, loosen and come off while it's boiling, which means you would lose your product. This is especially important when you're pressure cooking, but we're just water bathing. So make sure they're just hand tight as you're putting them in. Always best to use one of these little devices for placing your jars. That way you don't burn yourself. I've already made sure that all of them are hand tight. And I'm gonna go ahead and just get them all loaded now. And at that point, once they're loaded and the water is boiling, you're gonna boil them or process them for 45 minutes. This can be adjusted if you're at higher elevations, but I mean, that's pretty rare. But 45 minutes for the quart jars, which is what we're doing today. You also want to make sure that the water is over the lids and rims. So make sure that once you've finished loading them, that the water does go over the lids and the rims. If it doesn't, you can add some more hot water from the tap, and then just make sure that you watch for that water to start simmering and boiling again, and then that's when you'll start that 45-minute processing time. So we'll be back after 45 minutes. All right, so our water bath is done. We got to 45 minutes, so we're ready to pull those out and let them cool. I will tell you one thing that I do is I take my cookie sheets and I put them upside down on my countertop, and when I take those out of the hot boiling water, I put them on this just to protect my countertops. Sometimes I'll even put like a towel on there for to collect the water. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that now. We also are going to use our little jar grabbers to get the jars out of the canner. So let's see. They're gonna be really hot, so just be very, very, very careful. Even the water on the lid is gonna be super hot. So just make sure that you have a good grip on them and you don't drop them or splash any of that hot water on you. And we will be able to get them out without burning ourselves or dropping anything. So let me get these all out of the canner and then we'll talk about the next step. All right, so while our water bath was running for the diced tomatoes and onions, I finished cutting up all of the tomatoes. In total, I think it took me about an hour and a half to dice up 50 pounds of tomatoes and 1.5 bags of onions. So that wasn't too bad. So now I'm getting ready to get the Rotel ingredients all together. So for the Rotel, I do like the onions to be diced a lot more fine. I don't like them to be the chunky diced onion. I actually want them finely diced like you'll see here. So I'm using the food processor for that. So I'm gonna just peel the onion, I'm gonna cut it into quarters, and I'm using the slicing part of my food processor here, and then I'm just dumping them in. I find it's important to do them in quarters so that way I don't end up with half rings. This way it actually does dice them, even though I'm using the slicing. And that's it for the onions. So the rest of the ingredients are, I have some mild jalapenos and banana peppers that I've already canned that I'm gonna use. And I also have an assortment of very hot peppers. We're not gonna use probably this whole thing because they are really, 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 really hot. So this is going to go in as well as garlic. So let me grab the garlic and we'll pick back up. All right, so I ended up using 2 pints of jalapeno and banana peppers. They were pickled together. And then I used that whole pint of the super hot peppers. So we'll see. Todd likes things really hot. I like it mild. So we'll see how hot this turns out. And then I buy minced garlic in bulk at Sam's. Way cheaper to buy it this way. So I'm probably gonna put, we like a lot of garlic, plus if you have enough garlic, it'll actually heat things up. I'm gonna put a whole cup of garlic in there because again, oops, I do have a completely full roaster, so I think a full cup of garlic will be really good. So let me do that. All right, so as you can see, I've got my onions, I've got my peppers in here, obviously the tomatoes. I do clean as I go. It really helps with the mess because this can be quite messy. So I did get the sink and everything cleaned up, but now let's go ahead and add our garlic. Like I said, I'm gonna go ahead and do a full cup, but I wanna make sure I actually get garlic and not just the liquid it's sitting in. So we'll go ahead and tablespoon that in. Now I'll also say that I did use pickled peppers this time because I had them in there, the pantry, and they did need to be used up, but I do prefer to use fresh vegetables whenever I'm canning things or making my recipes, especially when I make my homemade spaghetti sauce. I will do an episode on that as well. But there's a full cup of garlic. So we are going to get this all mixed up, and then we'll be able to get it in the jars. You do not need to cook the Rotel ahead of time before putting it in the jars. It's just like the diced onions and tomatoes. It'll actually cook while it's water bathing. So same process for canning or for ladling these into the jar. Like I said, I'm gonna mix this up, and then we'll use our little funnel and we will get our jars filled. So let me do that, and then I will come back to you guys with the next step. Hopefully you're pausing this when I say that, and you are getting your pieces done along with me. That way you are able to get your stuff canned as well. All right, let me get this started. All right, so where we are at this point is I've got my diced tomatoes that have already come out of the canner sitting over here to cool. While those were water bathing, I got everything diced up for the Rotel, and now I've got everything mixed up. I'm ready to can it. So I'm gonna go ahead and fill the jars, and this will also water bath for 45 minutes, just like the diced tomatoes and onions. When they're done water bathing, I'm gonna go ahead and take them out and let them cool. And they're gonna have to cool overnight. I recommend 12 hours at least for cooling. That way, as the jars cool, they actually pop, and a lot of times you'll hear them pop, and that means it's sealed. So we will continue this video tomorrow once everything has had time to cool. I get this in jars and water bath, and then I will show you how to check for sealed jars and what to do with a jar that doesn't seal. All right, I hope you are working through this process and getting some diced tomatoes and onions and Rotel for yourself. So let's all check back tomorrow. All right, so we have let our jars cool overnight, and we are now ready to check and make sure that they've all sealed. And for anything that hasn't sealed, I'm gonna show you a super easy trick to get them sealed without having to completely redo the water bath. So, pretty easy to check and see how they've sealed. I've got them all lined up here on the counter, and you're literally just gonna go along each jar and press to make sure that they don't give. So they should feel solid when you're pushing on them. You may get to a jar that as you push on it, it does give and you hear it kind of pop. Just double check it, because typically that's all it takes to just get that sealed. Okay, so here's one that is not sealed. So if you push on it, it's giving and you can hear that sound. So we know this one didn't seal. So we're gonna set this one aside. So I don't know if you heard that, but as I pushed on this one, it popped, and now it is sealed. This one is not sealed, so we'll pull that one out. It's pretty common to have some that don't seal for whatever reason. This one isn't sealed. Here's two more that didn't seal. And I'm noticing that the ones that aren't sealing are a new brand of lid that I bought, and it was a little bit cheaper. I don't like it. Here's another one. So I bought it's called Pure, P-U-R. They were like half the price of the ball, and I picked those up on a whim to just give them a try, and I would not recommend them because all of these are either generic or the Pure. So I really recommend that you get the ball seals. All right, so we have quite a few, unfortunately, that did not seal, but not a big deal. So typically, like I said, you would need to put these through the water bath process again. You'd open up each one, take the seal off, make sure it's all really clean, and then put the seal back on and put your rim back on, and then run it through the water bath again for 45 minutes. You don't have to do that if you have this awesome little device. It's a vacuum sealer for mason jars. It's got the regular mouth setting, and then it's got this ability to unlock it, and this would be for your wide mouth jars. They're about 25 bucks on Amazon, 100% worth it. So highly recommend having one of these. Now, because we've already water bathed them, and they are, they've already gone through that process, and they're sterilized, and any bacteria or whatever would have been killed in the process, we can use this. You cannot use this to substitute for the water bath, because that whole process is to make sure that like sterilizing the jars, the rings, the seals, that's all to sterilize, kill bacteria, and then once the product is in the jar, we're water bathing for the exact same reason. So don't skip that thinking that we can just use this instead of a water bath. You do still need to do your water bath. But if after the water bath, you have one that doesn't seal, you can get the ring off and you can use this awesome little thing. You just take the ring off, leave your seal on. Do not take the seal off because it's all sterilized and everything is clean in there. So we just literally want to force it to seal now. So we're going to take this, we're going to push it on, and there's a little button here. You can see it starts to count down the set number of seconds that this will run. And then when it's done, it will show you the percent of pressure that it needed to seal the jar, which is kind of a cool thing. You don't really need to know that, but it does show that to you. And then I'll be able to show you once this finishes that it is in fact sealed now. While that's going, because it can take about a minute to do that, the next thing that I'm going to do with these is I'm going to label each one with what's in the jar and the month, year that it was canned. That way I can constantly keep my stuff rotated, and I'm always using the oldest one first and keeping the newest stuff in the back. That way I don't have something that maybe I canned a year ago and then I'm canning more now, and I put that in there and then I grab what I just canned instead of rotating it. So always label it with contents and the month, year that it was canned. It's not necessary to put the date, just the month and the year is fine. And then I will get these stacked and put in my pantry, so I am stocked. Again, we did the Rotel, which I will list the recipe for each one of these in this video. I'll add it to the beginning. But and then we did diced tomatoes and onions. I did end up putting up 3 pints of jalapenos. These are fresh. I just sliced them, put them in the jar, poured vinegar in here, put some pickling salt in here and pickling lime so they would stay crisp. And then I water bathed them for 45 minutes because I threw them in with the last couple quart jars. But typically your pints only require about 30 minutes. And then I used a 1/4 teaspoon of the pickling salt and the pickling lime, 1/4 teaspoon of each in that. And then I also finished up the relish that I had ground up the other day. I didn't have enough stuff to finish it, so I did these as sweet and spicy pickle relish. I'll get you the recipe for this as well. All right, so this is finished. So we're just gonna take that off, and if you can tell, you don't hear it popping anymore like these, right? So this is now sealed. So super handy little thing. I mean, way easier to take all of these jars and just run them through this instead of having to fire up the stove and heat up the kitchen for another 45-minute water bath. But that's it, people. I now have 18 quarts of Rotel. I have 13 quarts of diced tomatoes and onions. I've got 3 pints of fresh jalapenos, and I have 6 of the sweet and spicy hot dog relish. So hope you found this video helpful. I will make additional videos as I can other things. This is probably the easiest thing to can. It's very, very beginner friendly. Don't be afraid to start. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out or post a comment below. I'll make sure that you also have my contact information. All right, everyone, thanks for watching, and don't forget to hit the subscribe button.